Thank you for listening to the Business Blast podcast. So for all my listeners out there that have been wanting to do your own podcast, I'd like to introduce to you Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing, and monetizing your podcast. So before I found Anchor, I had never actually done a podcast because all the research that I had gathered made it seem very complex. Then I found Anchor, and Anchor makes podcasting extremely simple. So if you want to do your own podcast, go to anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Welcome to the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. This episode is brought to you by Authors Unite. Authors Unite provides you with all the resources you need to become a successful author. You can learn more about Authors Unite and join the free community at authorsunite.com. Now, let's jump into the episode. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. Today I have Dom Francis with us. He's the Workforce Development Manager for South Carolina's Department of Health and Environmental Control. So welcome to the show, Dom.
Thank you.
Of course, man. Thanks for joining us. We'll dive into the first one. The first question I have for you, Dom, is what is the best story from your life that has an underlying valuable message?
I would say the story I choose is a very recent one. I graduated with my master's degree from the Arnold School of Public Health in December 2017. And then for a little over 6 months, I was unemployed. And it was super painful because it was the first time in my life I was not employed or in school that I can remember, because before that I'd been in school since I was 5. Anyways, point being to don't fight the opportunity you have to get to know yourself and explore your interests. As frustrating as these last few months have been, I learned a substantial amount about myself, and I don't think I would have learned them had I not been, though not at my own will, forced to not have a job.
Definitely. The next one is what is your most valuable piece of information that we should know that is within your expertise or industry?
Within my expertise, I'd say good information to know is everything is interrelated. In public health, understand that nothing, really it's the way the universe works, except maybe space or a black hole. Nothing is in a vacuum. So understand that every action has a direct pro or con, or an indirect pro or con to every other element that exists. So just keep that in mind.
And what's your best piece of overall business advice? So not necessarily industry specific.
Overall business advice, make sure that you're not afraid to communicate. You'd be surprised where a newfound relationship will go, as simple as a hi in an elevator.
And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
It's going to sound really cliche, but don't rush it. Just enjoy what you're going through, because as anxious as you might be about whatever the challenge is at the time, you're just going to be anxious to the same degree about something else months from then or a year from then. Don't sweat it.
And in your opinion, what is the key to happiness?
The key to happiness, I feel, is actually not even inadvertently trying to be happy. Because happy is an emotion. Like sad is, like mad is. Insert whatever emotion you want to. Try to maintain peace. And peace is more about a state of mind than an emotion. So that way, when you're angry, you can still be peaceful. When you're sad, you can still be peaceful. If you're always trying to maintain one emotion, that's going to frustrate you. But if you try to maintain one specific state of mind, it makes it that much easier for you to return to happiness.
Yes, I love that, man. And what is the best book that you've read, and what was the number one thing you learned from that?
Best book I've read is probably, at least right now at this stage of my life, Eat That Frog. Number one thing I learned from it is do the worst, most challenging task you can on your to-do list as soon as possible when the day starts. It'll make your life easier.
And what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is, if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm. And I really like that quote just because from a faith-based standpoint as a Christian, kind of the ultimate opponent is our own sin. So if you focus on finding peace and not feeling tempted, but being confident in your ability not to sin, you do well. But even on a more secular standpoint, if you're at peace, as I kind of mentioned earlier, it's harder for things to rattle you. So just try to maintain your own personal sphere of influence, and everything else is easier.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on. The last question I have before we let you go is, where is the best place for people to find you online?
At this stage of my life, just LinkedIn, to be honest.
Perfect, man. Thanks again for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a good one.